This is going to be your best
Listen.
podcast ever.
Epicurean. But OFC and pink lemonade's pretty damn good. It'll put your boat in the marsh. Jesus did not die so you could eat yellow number 5. Excitable.
The nose starts off gentle with noticeable scents of grain that takes shape in the form of fresh baked bread.
Ma'am, you're in the wrong podcast. Educated-ish. I have used the term overproof for so long without really knowing what it
Constitutes?
Yeah, because for
Is
me,
there a definition officially?
welcome to Bitches and Bourbon. We're live. Hello, Reba. How are you doing today, ma'am?
Hello, April. You know, it's been a hell of a week, but...
Well, that's what we do, right? That's what we do.
Freaking weekend, baby. I'm going to have me some fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Here's the real truth. What I love about that is, like, next week will probably be the same way. And if we've hit our end on Wednesday, we'll just fuck up a Wednesday and then just move on about our time, right?
Like, won't be the first
We'll just
time.
throw them in. We'll just throw them in whenever we need to get one in, right?
Yep.
Well, I will tell you, I have had a pretty excitable week because, like, I knew tonight was happening.
Yes.
And I've been like a little kid at Christmas.
Looking forward to it as well.
So what I will tell you is one of the other voices, and we've had guests before, and I love all my guests, and I want all of them to know that I love you, love you, love you. So please understand this is not you. This is about me. But never, ever have I ever been so thrilled, right?
Yes.
For somebody that I had never met before,
Right.
to have the opportunity to talk to them.
Yes.
Right. Because not only did she grow up around wine, right?
Mhm.
And then she was an English type major, knows Japanese, studied abroad, taught English abroad, chocolate, right? Like she's done all of these things. And now she fucking makes whiskey.
Yes.
Like, I don't know at what point I don't know if I was like, I hit a red light on the way to high school one time and this whole life path escaped me. But now that I have gotten her in my life, like, I think that I'm just going to make her my new bestie.
Yes.
So who we have tonight, without further ado, the bitches are thrilled to have Lauren Patz, head distiller of Redwood Empire Whiskey. Lauren, how the hell are you?
I'm great. I'm super excited to be here. When I heard the name of your podcast, I was like, oh, Elliot, I'll fit right in because I was doing this kind of bartending workshop, and my nickname at the workshop was the Sour Bitter Bitch.
Hell yeah.
Type of cocktails that I like to drink. So I was like, oh, I've got my nickname already. I'm ready to go.
Sour
Nice.
bitter bitch. You know what we should do now? So, like, Lauren can be like an honorary bitch.
Yeah.
And so now that she's sour bitter bitch, like, we need to, like, I could be like peaty bitch, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You can be like American bitch. Like, we should all have like our own little, we should think about that.
Bourbon bitch instead of Reba Bourbon.
Yeah, right. Well, the podcast is Bitches and Bourbon, so we'll have to like have like another one that like the bitches, like the bourbon bitches would be like the umbrella.
Yeah.
But peaty bitch, I want to be peaty bitch. That's what I want to be.
I like it.
So I also heard that you're a pretty big fan of the Boilermaker.
Yes. Well, that kind of actually goes in line with being at a bartending workshop, in that I'm horrible at making cocktails. Like, pathetic. As somebody who's been, making spirits for over a decade now, I am so sad to say I'm not great at making cocktails. And so when people ask me like what my favorite cocktail is, I usually say a Boilermaker. I'm definitely a beer and a shot kind of girl. Or super sour, super bitter cocktails.
So now your Boilermaker, are you a dropper or a shooter sipper?
I think I'm I'm less of a dropper because I want to taste the whiskey on its own. And so it's hard for me to drop whiskey into beer.
Yes.
But I realize that can you really call it a Boilermaker if you don't do that? There might be some room for interpretation there, but I will drop it from time to time. It depends on what the whiskey is.
It's my opinion that if I'm picking up the check, that I can drink it any way I want to. And if I feel like I want to do this first one that I order this way and the next one that I order this way, well, then I'm just good with it. And I'm not real surprised that you're a shitty cocktail maker because Redwood Empire really doesn't. I know that you guys have a lot of suggestions for cocktails, but quite frankly, we have already had the pipe dream, which is how we even got associated with you guys. One of our things that we like to do is we'll go to the store and people that know us will do it too. They'll look and they'll go, oh, I've never seen this bottle before. I think I'll buy it. So being on the East Coast, it's been pretty recent that we've been able to get it where we are. So somebody brought the pipe dream here. It was delicious. I do not mind telling you that the bottle was gone that evening. It didn't make it to another day. And so when I went back to the liquor store, they had the pipe dream, the Lost Monarch, and the Emerald Giant. And so I just bought them all. And I was super excited to try them. So, podcast world, that is what we have tonight. We have 3 expressions of Redwood Empire whiskey. First is going to be the Pipe Dream Bourbon. We bought all of these at Jeff's Beverage April 29th of this year. They all cost us $37.99. The bourbon is actually, they all are 90 proof, 45% ABV. The composition varies depending on the expression. Real shorthand, the bourbon is obviously going to be a corn-heavy bourbon mash bill. The whiskey blend is going to be a rye whiskey and a bourbon whiskey blend. And then the Emerald Giant is going to be a high rye 95% rye mash bill. All of them are going to be between a blend of 4 to 12 years, some of them 3 to 5, just kind of depending on which one you're talking about. Booze App has all of them somewhere between 40 and 50 bucks. So I got a deal, I think, and I'm pretty thrilled about that. But we liked Pipe Dream so much, and then we saw all these different expressions, and I thought if you did not mind too much tonight, Reba and I would really like to start with the Lost Monarch. It was where I'd really like to start. Mostly because we've already had the Pipe Dream and I can already tell you that we both loved it. We already know. The Lost Monarch was really interesting to me because Reba and I have had a lot of discussion about different types of whiskey. And when we first started, one of the big things that we would come up against was, that's not bourbon. That's not bourbon. That's not bourbon. Well, some of it wasn't bourbon because quite frankly, we're bitches in bourbon because it looks fun and it's just catchy and it's alliterative and the guys, our husbands came up with it.
Yes.
They like it. Truth is, while Reba does
like bourbon,
I prefer Scotch. Scotch is my whiskey of choice. So that's obviously not a bourbon, but High West is obviously has bourbon. Redwood has bourbon, and you're not made in Kentucky, and that's just okay. So
I say you can ask me any question. You know what I mean? And there's no dumb questions, and there's only one dumb statement, and that statement is you can't make bourbon outside of Kentucky.
Oh, yes.
If you ask me if you can make bourbon outside of Kentucky, yes, please, all day, love it. I'll answer that question for you. But I hate it when people come up to me, someone who is a professional distiller who makes bourbon and says, you can't make bourbon outside of Kentucky. And I'm just like, ugh, I know exactly how this conversation's going to go.
Yes.
Exactly who you are. Like, no, thank you.
It's always funny to us that the amount of ways that people will choose to segregate themselves within their love of whiskey, which is so weird because it's fun. Like when it ceases to be fun, I'm not really sure what you're sitting at the table for. And so one of the conversations that we've really gotten into, especially when we started to delve more into the scotches that I like, is one of the questions that drive me nuts is, do you prefer single malt? And I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like I literally have zero fucks to give about single malt, single barrel, single reserve. I literally don't care. I need you to pour it in my glass. I need you to let me taste it. And if it's delicious, I'm so thrilled that you figured out how to do that. These are the same people that would never like make a pot roast with just salt. Like they would never just do the one note thing. Like they would
Yes.
they would put all of these different, they would blend it all up, they would make it delicious, and that's what you do. So the Lost Monarch was really fascinating to me because not only do you guys pull from different barrels, but you guys are also pulling from different mash bills. And so you're taking that bourbon and you're taking that rye and you're putting them together. And tell me a little bit about the blend and kind of what your thoughts are about kind of the negative connotation that blend tends to get.
Yeah, I mean, historically, blended whiskey is considered to be subpar because of the potential inclusion of things like neutral grain spirit, and like lower quality distillate, because it's a place that you can have additives. It's a place where you can hide a lot of imperfections. And so it's considered to be a lower quality product historically. Moving on into this, explosion of craft distillation and kind of like this really exciting frontier of innovation that craft distillers and larger producers are kind of embarking on right now. It's also a space that is really open to a variety of different expressions. So you can do a lot more within a blended whiskey space than you can within, say, a bourbon. I mean, there's some pretty strict guidelines process wise and raw material wise for things like bourbon and rye, and some of the more maybe recognizable spirit categories. But for blended whiskey, the gloves are off. All bets are off. You know what I mean? You can kind of do whatever you want. And there's been some really exciting, fun stuff that's been coming out in blended whiskey in the past couple of years. I like to think of like barrel as being a good example of doing some fun, interesting things within that space. I mean, aging their stuff in different barrels and kind of like pulling different flavor profiles together. And so this was our kind of playground of flavor profiles. It's a rye-bin, so 55% rye and 45% bourbon. I got that from High West.
I love that
from High West. High West is more rye, but
they seem like good folks. I don't think they'll mind.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed. Well, I'll tell you, that was a pretty formative bottle, that rye that I had from them years and years and years ago when it still had like the jackalope on it. I don't know if it still has that or even if they still make it. But yeah, it was such a fun product. And so this is kind of like a play on putting different spirits together. So I actually prefer rye to any other American style whiskey. My favorite type of whiskey is actually Japanese whiskey, because I think it's the more finessed, fancier version of Scotch. It's a little bit less aggressive, I would say, in your face most of the time. Not all the time. That's a generalization.
Well, that's super encouraging because when we leave you, we have Air Force retired paintball coach extraordinaire Chuck Johnson coming on the show.
Yep.
And he brought 2 bottles. We're going to do the Tenjaku. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
And the Hibiki?
Which Hibiki?
Girl, I don't know. The one he brought me.
Suntory whiskey. Suntory.
I think it's, if there's a regular one, I would bet it's probably the regular one.
It's probably, I mean, not to get into your next show.
Oh no, you could come on every show.
It's probably Hibiki Harmony.
Yes, I think that's what it said.
Hibiki 12 year is Hibiki 12 year is my all-time favorite, and that is kind of what they stopped making so that they could make Hibiki Harmony. And so that's why I have some feels about Hibiki Harmony, but I love Hibiki. It's great.
So I will tell you, this is a Bitches and Bourbon record.
What?
We are 13 minutes and 45 seconds in, and we haven't tasted shit.
I know. I've got an issue with that.
Totally.
I'm trying not to interrupt.
Total record. Total record. Pardon us.
Cheers.
Yeah, of course. Cheers.
So I want to talk about this Lost Monarch because it's still in my mouth and I'm thrilled about that. Mm-hmm. Like it's got a hit to it. It's got a spice to it, but I don't feel like my jaw needs to be readjusted. Neat. Some folks with a smaller enjoyment of that spiciness may like a chaser, may like a little water, may like a little ice. But for me, I think it's a great balance of kind of
Nice little tingle.
Yeah, catching the little shorty bits, but just still kind of like lets you move on and keep going. It's not going to stop a conversation, but you'll absolutely notice that somebody said something, right? I really like that.
It's pretty smooth.
But rye is your favorite. So is Emerald Giant your favorite?
Of the core, yeah.
Yeah.
Emerald Giant. All of the rye that we make, I think, is exceptional, like beyond exceptional. I think the rye that we put together is pretty unique and special. So, but for the Lost Monarch, it's absolutely the dark horse of the three. You know, there are some preconceptions about blended whiskey. We mentioned before about the quality of it. And so people never gravitate towards the Lost Monarch without being kind of like nudged towards it the first time. Because it's just like, oh, I recognize bourbon, I recognize rye, I have, you know, kind of like the expectation of what those could be, but I'm not really sure what I'll get if I pick up a bottle of the Lost Monarch. The Lost Monarch is the most versatile out of all three of them because it has elements of both the bourbon and the rye in it, you know, and if you're interested in mixing, like this one, you can really play up either flavor profile, and it just has this incredible versatility to it for like your home bar. You can have that one bottle and literally make anything from it. But you were mentioning like some people might want to add a little bit of water, a little bit of ice to it. That is part of the reason why every one of our spirits is at 90 proof, is because, again, it gives consumers flexibility. It has versatility to it. So you can either add water to it, you can mix it in a cocktail, and it's not too diluted to still kind of experience what the spirit has to offer.
So that across the board 90 proof, that's intentional.
For the core, absolutely. 90 proof decisions are always intentional. It's one of the big decisions that distillers make. You know, obviously high proof is having a bit of a moment right now, cask strength, barrel proof, all that kind of stuff. And I love that because, you know, it shows people a little bit even, you know, more behind the curtain about what we do. And that's what we're tasting and that's what we're deciding at how much water to add to kind of bring it down. But proof is really just a lens at which we experience flavors within the whiskey, right? It has to do with the chemistry and the solubility of those different chemical components and how our mouth is interacting with those. So like tasting things at different proof is a revelation because you really get to see like that spectrum, that rainbow of flavor that a whiskey has to offer.
I recently discovered a thing about myself and the spirits that I enjoy. And when I discovered it, it was a huge epiphany for me. And so now when I discuss it with other people and they're like, yes, 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 I love that. Or they're like, no, 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 I hate that. The question I always ask them is, do you like black licorice? And if they say yes or no, I know which way to move them in their I've always hated it, I've always loved it kind of journey.
Gin.
Yes. Yes.
It's gotta be gin.
It's got to be gin, right?
I should have known that was the answer because do you want to know what my favorite candy is?
Black licorice.
Salted black.
That's funny.
So now to validate my question, I have another question. Hendrick's gin, thoughts? Are you
Hendrick's gin is, I gotta say, Hendrick's gin is the gateway gin. Hendrick's gin is the reason why craft gin is like, people are excited about it. People are drinking it. Like, I got to put a lot of respect into Hendrick's gin. It was probably one of the first alternative, you know, gins that I ever had, or I guess we call them like contemporary gins now because they're not, you know, London Dry or, you know, really hyper focused on the juniper. So, for example, Hendrick's specifically is cucumber and rose, right, are the two flavor profiles in it. Would I drink Hendrick's now?
No, because you love salted black licorice.
Right.
No, you obviously wouldn't.
Now.
I hated gin for years. I hated gin, and because I couldn't find one that I like. It always tasted like black licorice to me. Like I couldn't get past that initial note. Like it always hit me in the face. But then somebody at this party had this thing, and he was like, "Oh, it's Hendrick's." And that's all he said was Hendrick. I didn't know what Hendrick's was. I smelt it. It smelled delicious. I tasted it. It tasted delicious. I'm like, "Oh, what kind of booze is that?" He said gin. And I'm like, that, like, the heaven gates opened for me. Like, I felt like I had been able to, I'd been invited to walk into a whole new world of people who enjoy gin that
An
I had never,
appreciation.
that I had never been able to be a part of that conversation. So your thoughts on your brand, like, you guys you haven't been the distiller at this distillery alone. You've worked at other distilleries before. You grew up in the wine industry as well. Like, your parents were winemakers. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, they owned a winery. I always say their winery is like my third sibling and by far the most successful one so far. Yeah. I've just been lucky,
I don't know that you've just been lucky. If I had to guess, it was a pretty big move from California to Maine. I would guess that was a huge move, right? When you went,
it was definitely. I was surprised.
and like, were you traditional college age? Did you graduate high school and then go straight to college?
I did.
So you're 18 nothing.
Yeah.
California all your life, around your family your whole life, third sibling your whole life, and then off to Maine? Like, that's crazy. And then you decide, oh, I think I'll go to Japan and teach English. So then you do that.
Mm-hmm.
That had to have been. So it seems to me you're in a male-dominated industry, right? I mean, it's a particularly male market. It would seem to me that luck would have very little to do with it. It would seem to me that you would have probably had to work pretty hard and be pretty good at what you do to be where you are at right now.
I think the luck comes into play where I'm fortunate, like, I can make decisions. Like, if I want to do something, I can go and do it. You know what I mean? I don't have a huge amount of responsibilities, so I can just kind of go do my own thing. My brother, I have an older brother, and he calls it following my goose. So he, like, saw this cartoon one time with this, like, kind of like dressed up, in nice formal clothes family, pushing the stroller around. And then there's this woman, like, in a bathrobe and, like, scuba gear and just, like, top hat, all of it following a goose. And he's like, "That's my sister." Like, clearly that's her just doing her own thing, marching to the beat of her own drum. So I think, I think I've been lucky and fortunate to be able to just pursue things that I really truly have a passion for and, like, a love for. And I feel grateful in that respect. Yeah. I like working hard. I'm a very academic person. I love learning and I love engagement. I love organization, like all that kind of stuff. But and so I do think I do work hard, but I also realize, like, I've been really lucky for the opportunities I've had too.
That's awesome.
So how do we move from medieval studies, double major with Japanese, to drinking 190 proof booze out the barrel? I mean, how do we get there? How do we do that?
How do we do that? It's a long story, but actually, when I was in high school, I wanted to do this program in Japan called the JET program, which is a English teaching program that's run through the Japanese government. And so that was, like, my whole life goal, right? Is, like, going and teaching English through this specific program. So I went to a college that had a really great Japanese program, and for a small liberal arts school. And then I applied and I got in and I did that program. And when I was there, I had a couple of thoughts, two thoughts. One was, I peaked too soon. Like, what am I supposed to do now? I don't know. I don't have any dreams or goals or anything. I did it. I checked my one box off. And then the other was that I was really frustrated because I was a big baker. I love baking, and there's no ovens there, right? So, I mean, traditional Japanese cuisine doesn't really include baking. And so there's, like, a lot of stovetop, a lot of broiler for fish, stuff like that. And so I started making a lot of candy. I started doing, like, caramel and marshmallow and, chocolates and things like that. So I started doing a lot of stovetop candy making, and I got really into that. So I thought, when I came back to the US, that I would start my own confectionery company. and kind of like have an Asian themed confectionery company. Like I love azuki bean, or you may not be, it's like the red sweet bean paste. Is delicious. Kinako, which is like ground soy stuff. It tastes exactly like peanut butter. So I was going to make like kinako cups and do like wasabi caramel and green tea marshmallow, stuff like that. You know
I
what
would
I
eat
mean?
that.
Yeah.
The wasabi caramel.
Right.
I would put that in my face.
Yeah.
For sure. Because and
Totally.
now you're fluent.
Well, I used to be fluent. It's been like, I was thinking about it because I have a friend who's going to go live over there. And I was thinking about it. She's like, can I talk to you about living in Japan? And I was like, absolutely. But it's been over a decade since I lived there. And I was like, yikes. And I really haven't used much of my Japanese, but
It's crazy how time does that, right? When she was talking about like responsibilities. So Reba has been a mom since she was 17.
Yeah.
I was a mom when I was 20. Like we were both wives when we were teenagers. Like we've never, like that's never been a thing that we've done. So I can assure you, you did not peak early. I would bet like your 40s, because you are not 40 yet. Is that right?
not yet.
Oh, I bet it's going to be shit changes.
Yes.
When you turn 40. Yeah, there's something that happens, like your eyesight goes, your hearing starts
Your
to
joints.
your body starts to hurt a little bit. But to compensate for that, like your fuck bucket
Yes.
that holds all the fucks you give, like bottoms out, and they all
Yeah.
just fall out and they just go, like they just go away.
What is so funny? What's so funny is like I'm finishing up the something about the life-changing magic of not giving a fuck.
Great book.
Like
Great book.
because like it's been a lot. And I'm like, yes, I need to prioritize the fucks I give and which ones I can drop. And
I read that book and I was like, this is really like, I love her. I love women like that. Like
Yeah.
I'm just always fascinated by women who have decided like, these are my 365 rotations. Like I'm the only one that gets them. Nobody gives me their 365 rotations.
right.
So why would I give mine to somebody else? Yes, we have people that we love. Yes, we have people that we do things for. Yes,
Right.
we have people that we're in community with, but these rotations still belong to me. And
Right.
at the end of each of those rotations, like I have to say, yes, I did the very best I could do today. May not have been my absolute very best, but it was my absolute very best today.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I feel like when we talk to you, Lauren, like you've had a whole lot of rotations like that. I'm certain, and I won't get into it because I know it has to get exhausting. I know it has gotten exhausting for me on occasion, but it has to get exhausting to go, but you're a woman who does X, you don't do Y. This is the normal thing, whatever normal means that women do, and you don't do these, but you do this. It has to get exhausting for people to be like, you have a vagina, and so this is a weird thing that you do. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I think it's always funny because there's almost this feeling of like, I don't know what to do when I'm with somebody like that. Not me, but like the other person that I'm with is like kind of in this confused state of like, do I treat this person differently or not? Or like, what can I say? I mean, particularly when I'm working like on the floor in production and I'm, giving my piece and saying what I think, which is, I don't want to say I'm loud, but I'm definitely intense because I feel really strongly about things. I have a lot of confidence in, my understanding of the process that we do. And, it's always safety, quality, efficiency. Those are the order in which I rate things and kind of like how I like to manage my facility and employees as well. So I've got that in my head and I know what I want to do. And so sometimes I think it might be less that I'm female and more just like I am very confident. So people are kind of taken aback, I think, when people are like very confident because they're used to people being a little bit more like, well, what do you think? Like, you know what I mean? Like try to ease people into it. I'm not about that. It's like a waste of my time. Like I want to get it done. I want to get in there. You know, I tell all of the people I work with, I was like, I'm absolutely, I'm open to anything. All my no's are soft no's. If you've got a good argument, you can convince me about anything, but I'm definitely not going to just say yes without having some sort of discussion or conversation about it. So, you know, my no is always a soft no. The Lost Monarch is my favorite spirit to taste with people who are kind of like opposite ends of the spectrum in the whiskey world, those who have like a lot of experience and those who have none. Because those who have a lot of experience, I think, really try to parse out what it is. So like they're smelling on it. To me, it has a lot of like bourbon indicators on the nose. And then when you taste it, it has that kind of like pop rock sensation, like those little kind of like flecks of spice that you get from rye. It's very startling for when you're expecting something to be kind of like creamy and luscious, like a bourbon. And so it kind of is that jarring experience. And I love a good surprise. But then again, on the other side, people who have like almost no experience drinking whiskey, I think there is a softness overall to the Lost Monarch, and it's like very intriguing. There's a lot of flavors going on in that Lost Monarch, so it can kind of draw you in as well.
You talked about like the soft opening for folks that kind of just start going into whiskey. We had a female in here the other night after book club. We host a book club here. It's called Books with Bitches and Bourbon, which is a whole lot of fun. But, on ice. And this female, like she's not a big whiskey drinker. She's more of a red wine kind of girl. Walked straight into 104 Penelope Architect. Like it was nobody's business. I was like, this is why we're friends. Like I knew when I first, because we've only known each other for a few minutes. And I'm like, this is why when I met you, I knew we would be fine. You've got that vibe about you.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely the exception and not the rule, right? Usually people have to kind of step up into that.
We never suggest it. We never suggest walking into one of those overproofs. And quite frankly, I love overproof whiskey. I think it's delicious. I enjoy drinking it. I think I think overproof whiskey is going to be dangerously close to becoming kind of a status symbol for especially new whiskey drinkers, if I may, especially new have something to prove whiskey drinkers, because there's become this contingent of I only drink overproof whiskey. Why? Like, why is that the only thing you drink? You sound like the exact same people that say, I only drink bourbon from Kentucky. I only drink this kind of thing. I only drink
single malt.
Yeah. Like, why is that it doesn't, that doesn't make you cool, right? Like, great. You can throw back Stag Junior. I'm so proud of you right now. Like, excellent for you. You can do 124. Meet Lauren. She drinks it straight out the barrel. Get on her level.
Hey, I try to proof down stuff too. You know, good product is good product. And I think you really limit yourself when you close yourself off to other opportunities and options. So, you know, cask strength, we talked about, you know, high proof, overproof, whatever you want to call it, is absolutely having, you know, its moment right now. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody wants it. We put out a cask strength at the end of last year and have had an incredible amount of success with it. I do a good amount of spirit judging as well. And there was an overwhelming amount of high proof entries this year. I love high proof, but I don't only love high proof. Like the reason why I love high proof is because I get to have absolute control over how I'm drinking it by diluting it. Yeah. It's not like I'm just like, how hot can I throw it back? Yeah. I mean, I don't want the experience to be, you know, just the evaporation of alcohol in my mouth. I actually want to taste it. You know what I mean?
It was like a friend of ours asked us the other day. He's like, I'm new into whiskey tasting. Everybody's talking about all these things they taste when they taste their whiskey. Help me taste this better. And I'm like, the only way you taste it better is to eat more things, like taste more things. Like if you have no frame of reference for what a clove tastes like, you're never going to know that there's a clove back end on there. Like if you've never had those types of things going on, like if you don't drink black coffee, if you've never had black coffee, then there's a flavor missing from your profile. So eat more things, eat a lot of things, eat bunches of things.
I have one more suggestion for that too. I think, you're talking about vocabulary, right? Like you're trying to expand your vocabulary for, your sensory experience. Whenever people ask me like, how did you get to, be a good taster? Like, what is it? How did you do that? I always say that one of the most important things you got to do is you have to either write it down or you have to say it out loud to somebody else.
Yes.
You can't just sit there and think on it. You have to actually put it into some sort of physical form. And that's what helps build the link between like really understanding what you're experiencing and just kind of enjoying it or drinking it.
So we just opened the Emerald Giant.
The best one.
Reba, what'd you think about that one?
I haven't tried it yet.
Oh, well, I tried it neat, and I have it on ice. That's my favorite sound. Well, it's rivaled only by the pop of a champagne cork.
I can't say no to sparkles. I just can't. I love bubbles.
What did I tell you?
Yep.
I told you. My husband is so tired of hearing about you. He cannot stand himself. I'm like, babe. He's like, all right, I get it.
Got it.
I get it. And I'm like, but it's so cool. And she loves bubbles. So I'll tell you, the weirdest shit that I've ever, one of the weirdest things.
Good save.
Thank you.
Good save.
I don't know if it's ist, but it's up there. It's got to be top 5. So we're at a party. We're drinking red wine. I love red wine. And I love super nasty dry. Like I want the Sahara Desert in my mouth. Like I love that. And so we're drinking red wine and somebody has champagne and they throw this champagne in my glass of wine. So now I've got a champagne spritzer with this red wine and it's delicious. And somebody else goes, oh, this tequila is so good. And I'm like, they've got these shots of tequila poured and they're like, this tequila is so good. And I'm like, yeah, well, I have a drink. So they pour the shot of tequila in my red wine champagne spritzer. It was delicious.
Yeah.
No, it was the weirdest thing.
She never thought possible.
How many glasses of wine did you have before?
Actually not as many as you would think, because the truth is, and you can ask Reba, and Reba's the exact same way. We'll try damn near anything once.
Yes.
Like if
that's the way to do it.
If you put it in my glass, I'll try. Like I've even had Fireball.
Yes.
Like
I've had Fireball many times.
Well, good for you.
I was a younger person at one time, and I was at a warehouse rave. I mean, and like, what else? I'm gonna drink,
Lauren.
Whatever's available.
Here's the real truth. I really think that Fireball is like this generation's Goldschlager.
Yes,
like I
agree.
I think there's a strong case to be made for it's this generation. And
completely agree.
I drank the shit out some Goldschlager.
Me too.
So I'm not mad. I've done the Boone's Farm.
Yep.
Like I've done all of those, so I'm not mad at the Fireball.
Right. It's just not for our generation.
Pleasures. And I'd be curious to hear what your comps would be to this. So my 2 guilty pleasures when it comes to spirits, the spirits that I drink. Number 1 is Crown Peach, because it tastes exactly like peach Snapple iced tea. Love it.
All right. I will speak to that one.
Yeah.
I do not particularly, Reba and I don't particularly care for flavored whiskey.
Right.
It's not our favorite. Somebody bought me for my birthday. Oh, and the Fireball. I think Jack
Yeah.
Daniel's Fire is an amazing cinnamon whiskey. I think Jack Daniel's Fire does a great job. So if you like Fireball, drink that. You're going to be great. Somebody bought me a bottle of Bird Dog peach whiskey for my birthday. It's so ridiculously sweet. I literally cannot.
Yes, no.
But I like the red wine champagne tequila. I can't throw shit away. Like, I've drank nastier shit, so I'll just choke it down and then we'll be done. So
Yeah.
the bottle is still in my cabinet, and winter rolls around. And I love a great hot toddy. But I'm like you. I'm also not a great cocktail maker. I don't understand the point of it. Like, if it's more than 3 ingredients, I've got questions. So, but I love a hot toddy. Tea, Bird Dog peach whiskey, done. Maybe a little bit of lemon if you feel like you need that in your life. And it makes the perfect hot toddy. So I am with you. I am with you on a great peach whiskey.
There's a time and a place for everything. I truly believe that. I absolutely believe it. One of my favorite things to judge is flavored whiskey, because a well executed flavor whiskey will blow your fucking mind. Like it. I think we double golded a salsa flavored whiskey. It was a white whiskey, a corn whiskey, unaged, and it had cilantro. It had cumin in it. It had like some sort of acidity that reminded me of tomato. It tasted like you were eating a corn chip with salsa on it. It was like
in the whiskey.
Yeah.
So
unaged.
So Penelope, because there were a couple of guys from New Jersey who really didn't know dick all about making whiskey until they actually started making whiskey, and they didn't even know all the questions to ask. They actually did a run and didn't ask what ran before theirs, because, all their stuff is sourced. But they did a run. The thing that went before them was a jalapeno tequila. So somewhere on the planet, they have a jalapeno Penelope running around the world. And I think if they still have that somewhere, and I'm put this out in the universe every chance I get, if somebody from Penelope can call me and tell me you still have a jalapeno Penelope, I think I can make the best fucking bourbon Bloody Mary anybody has ever had in their entire lives. I think I can, or a dumbass old fashioned, like a really ridiculous, crazy ass old fashioned. So anywho, all right, your second guilty pleasure.
Oh, my second guilty pleasure is Malibu, because it tastes like suntan lotion.
Yeah.
And it just reminds me of summertime.
So I don't know.
It makes a great punch.
All right.
It's like, here's what I think is, like, there's a difference to me when I worked in chocolate. There's a difference between chocolate and candy, right?
Right.
To me, Hershey's is candy. It's not chocolate. And so for me, Malibu is not a spirit, or it's not a spirit, it's booze, right? It's not.
Yes.
They're not the same thing in my mind.
So I don't know if you can get it where you are. It looks to me like the closest place to you is going to be Marina Del Rey, and I have no idea how close that is to you.
That sounds far away.
Your vicinity. But we recently met and did a podcast with the guy from Island John Vodka. And the family is from Trinidad. The distillery is in Newport Richey, Florida. And we had their apple guava and their mango peach vodka. And it's a no bullshit vodka, comes in at 80 proof. It tastes like vacation. But it doesn't have that super sweet, I think I'm going to get a hangover, or my jeans aren't going to fit in the morning because
doesn't
of
feel
the
like
sugar.
You're going to swell, or like all of the things.
It's clean.
Yes.
Yeah. It's clean.
You can tell that
crisp.
it's natural.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful vodka.
Natural flavors.
If you can get your hands on it, if Malibu is your jam, because I love Malibu. I love Malibu because you can take a blender, throw the whole bottle of Malibu in the blender over ice, squirt just a little bit of Mio in there and hit zzz, and you've got a drink. Like, that's all. I told you, 3 ingredients: ice, Malibu, Mio. It meets my requirement.
Malibu has a special place in my heart because it's one of the moments that kind of like led me to this trajectory that I'm on right now. I was moving back from Japan to California, and I was living in San Francisco. And a friend and I went out to a bar. It wasn't even a fancy bar. It was just kind of like a normal bar. And I went up to the bartender and I asked for a Malibu and Coke. And he gives me this look like, oh my God, this is a dumb bitch. Like, and he looks at me and he's like, I'm not making that for you. And I was like, oh.
Wow. There went your tip.
Yeah. And he's like, let me help you out. I mean, he might have been trying to be like cute about it because like I was cuter at that time. So like he might have been trying to like play it up or something like that. But he was like, let me help you out. And he made me a dark and stormy. And it changed my life. I mean, it was like a moment where I realized that, you know, cocktails didn't necessarily have to be like crazy sweet or like, you know what I mean? Taste like suntan lotion.
What is a dark and stormy?
So good. Dark and stormy, it's ginger beer and dark rum.
Huh.
But I go back to what you say, there's a time and place for everything, right? Like when you're 20 nothing and you're broke. Hello. We have an invader.
Ooh.
What did you bring us? Buffalo Trace for the win. Did you pay $286 for that? $50?
30.
30?
Yes.
Win.
Yes.
That's exactly what somebody should pay for Buffalo Trace.
Yes.
Amazing, amazing drink. Love that bottle. I don't know what happened to it. I don't know what happened to Blanton's.
Eagle Rare.
I don't know what happened. Well, here's the truth. Eagle Rare is a 10-year-old.
Well, yes.
That bottle was ever $35 kind of blows my brain because whiskey time is whiskey time and it takes what it takes. That you can hang on to barrels for 10 years, put
and
that shit
sell
in a
it
bottle
for $40
and then put it on the shelf for $30-$40
Yeah.
blows my brain. But good for you, Eagle Rare. I guess if you're selling the Eagle Double Rare for $15,000,
right?
I guess maybe there's some profit there. I don't know.
Pricing is crazy for spirits, just in general.
And some of that's legitimate, and I think some of it isn't. Blanton's, John Wick drinks Blanton's, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Blanton's has always been cool as far as I'm concerned. It's got the cool little horsey, and I'm a bottle chaser. I love a beautiful bottle, and I love John Wick. So those two things went really well. But I don't know what happened. Anywho, I'll get all off on a crazy tangent about pricing. There's just
It's wild.
There's just
I can't imagine.
There's just so many options out there. Anywho. And we read a review one time where the review guy said when he tasted Buffalo Trace, it reminded him of peanut butter and jelly.
Yes.
And that's the moment that I realized that not all whiskey reviewers
are respectable.
Anyway, I don't know.
Don't trust anybody.
But
that's why you have to do it yourself. You know, you
Yeah.
shouldn't trust somebody else's palate or opinions. You got to taste it yourself.
Circling back to there's a time and a place for everything. When you're 20 nothing and you can try all the things and you see what works for you and what doesn't work for you, I think that's the perfect time for it. And I think you should try all the things. There was a period in my life where I almost exclusively drank Cosmopolitans to the point where I'm in a sports bar in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, like a no bullshit sports bar. There's no glass in this bar. It is all the little white cups, right? You know, like so Savannah, I don't know how it is. I don't know how it is where you are, but we can drink
open carry.
We can open carry.
Yeah, on the street. Jealous. Super jealous. Can't do that here.
And so all the bars in Savannah at their exit, they have this stack of the white cups so that you can pour your drink and you can go. That's all the sports bar had. And so, but I'm exclusively drinking Cosmopolitans at this point because I'm 26 years old and that's what the fuck I do, right? And so I went behind the bar and taught the bartender how to make a Cosmopolitan, which was pretty kind of great. But I'd love the fact that that's a thing you can do. And it's still a thing that you can do where you go, no, I think I would just like that Woodford Double Oaked, neat, thank you. And then they just pour it for you and then you just drink it. Like, I think all of those things have a place.
Yeah.
Definitely. You know, That's part of the fun. You know, it wouldn't be as much fun if you were like only could drink it one way. I think that's what makes spirits stand out over beer and wine. Beer and wine, you're given a finished product, you consume it, it's delicious. That's the end of the story. With spirits, it's like, oh, am I going to have a cocktail? Am I going to have it neat? What type of cocktail am I going to have? You get to be so much more of a participant in that consumption.
Oh, I'm going to put you seriously on the spot right now.
Oh, great.
You can only drink one alcoholic thing for the rest of your life. What is it?
It's an oolong hai. It's shochu and oolong tea. That's what I drank every day when I was in Japan with these older Japanese gentlemen. I lived very rurally when I was there. And so there wasn't a lot of young people because all the young people go to the city and like work for a while and then they get married and then they come back and have families and stuff. So it was just me and all the grandpas and we were just drinking and I couldn't afford good sake, right? Because good sake is really expensive. So I was just drinking shochu and oolong tea, and they call it oolong hai. And they're like, yeah, you don't get hungover on these because, you know, you're drinking, you're hydrating at the same time, you know, and it's not true. It's definitely not true.
So I am completely unfamiliar with a lot of what you just said. So say more about this drink.
So shochu is a distilled spirit. It is distilled either from sweet potatoes or rice or both. And it comes, you know, I don't know if you've heard of like soju before. That's the Korean version of shochu. Shochu is the Japanese. And there's a variety of different qualities. It's kind of like, I guess the closest thing I'd think it's like is kind of like white whiskey. It's not super rectified. It has a lot of the raw material flavors still in it. And yeah, I think that's probably the best description of shochu, but it's a white spirit. It's clear. And then oolong tea is buckwheat tea.
So when you're hanging out with the Japanese grandpas, did you get them to play Dungeons and Dragons with you or no?
I wish. I could barely understand what they were saying. I'll tell you, the dialect is so heavy, and I think they take like particular pride in the fact that I like could not understand anything that they were saying. Because again, when you live really rurally, the accent is super thick, right? And so I was just like, please move your lips more because I can't understand what you're saying.
At this point, I'm along for the ride.
Yeah, I was. But there was a lot. The place, I mean, not completely Dungeons and Dragons adjacent, but the place that I was living is the #1 place for UFO sightings in Japan. So during the summer, they would have like these festivals out in the woods that, you know, you like listen to music, you like looking for aliens, like all kinds of fun stuff.
It totally sounds like us. We will throw a party for damn near anything.
Yes.
I love that.
How many years did you live there?
So I lived there 1 year during college and 3 years after.
Very cool.
Yeah. One of the things I miss the most is, you know, it was a small town that I was living in for the majority of that time for the 3 years after college. And every month, essentially, they would have some sort of town activity. So they broke the town up into sections, and that was your team. And so there's like a volleyball tournament 1 month. There's a marathon race the next month. There's a tug of war competition the next month, and stuff like that. And it was so fun. And where I was living was in the same area as the volunteer fire department and the only restaurant in the entire town. So our parties were like the best parties. Best food. We had the foreigner, like it was great. We had the fire department, all the cuties, you know.
I love everything about this. I could talk to you for 5 evers. Elliot never gave me your direct contact. That's probably a great thing. I have enjoyed this conversation more than I can possibly begin to tell you.
It's been a lot of fun.
So here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you I feel very confident that I have a ranking. I would go Lost Monarch, Pipe Dream, Emerald Giant. That's where I would go. That's where I would go.
I think I would agree.
Would you?
I think so.
This doesn't often happen. I love that.
Yeah.
I think so.
I think so.
Yeah.
So the Emerald Giant, and if you're a rye lover, I will tell you that you will love this. It is a great example of a fantastic rye expression. It has all of those spices and hits that you're looking for when you enjoy a high rye mash bill. It's no secret that it's often difficult for me to find a rye that I would pick over other things.
Yeah, same here.
Right. But I know what a good rye should taste like.
Yes.
This is definitively an example of that.
Agreed.
The pipe dream, and I'm sure like Penelope's 4-grain, Redwood Empire wouldn't necessarily describe it this way, but that pipe dream for me seems to be like that keystone bottle, that keystone expression, where if you're looking for this is where we build our empire, no pun intended, but this is where we start, this is where we begin, this is what we tell you is our character bottle. I would say Pipe Dream is that. It's a great bourbon. It's exactly what you expect to taste when you open a bottle of bourbon. At its price point, I don't know that you can do a whole lot better. We said the same thing about Penelope. I think they stand on this very even playing field of being appropriately priced.
Yes.
Fantastically blended.
Lots of options.
Lots of options. I think the one thing that I do agree with Lauren about in regards to the proof, where Penelope's 4-grain runs 80 and theirs runs 90, I think that you do have a greater ability to kind of have that whiskey kind of hold up when you try to do those cocktail kind of things.
Yes.
And then I think what Redwood but the Pipe Dream, what it also does, because it's not amazingly higher than that 80 proof.
Yes.
It's not going to be a difficult drinker. Like you're not going to have to work yourself into it.
Right. It can be for someone venturing in.
I agree.
Like even though it's 90 proof, like, I think that it's still very nice for someone who says, I would like to try bourbon.
Right. I agree. Like, I wouldn't have any problem with somebody walking in the door saying, I've never done this before.
Yes.
Can I please try that now?
Yes.
I would have no problem with saying, hey, look, I've got this Pipe Dream on my bar. Would you like to try it? I wouldn't have
Agreed.
any reservations about that at all.
I agree.
The Lost Monarch, however, for me, has a personality that is different in a way that I really kind of appreciate. I didn't blind test it. If I blind tested it, maybe this would be different, but I am a woman of total senses, right? If I know a story, if I see a label, if there's a bottle, if there's a smell, then that all moves into my experience. And I think that that's an okay, legitimate way to be. There's something about the current conversation about blends, the current kind of, and in fairness and appreciation, that conversation is on the uptick. That conversation is being moved into a place that says, you're thinking about blends the wrong way. I understand where this baggage comes from, but this blend connotation really doesn't hold true to the whiskey blends that we're doing right now. Lost Monarch, for me, is a great representation of why that conversation is important, why that conversation is relevant, and why when you move into these distillers and the blenders and these folks that are working hard at their craft to pull together these flavors when they taste these barrels doing what it is they do, it shows the artisan nature of what you can do with barrels of whiskey. And I think the Lost Monarch does that. It makes me happy. And I think that definitely goes to the top of my list.
I think that for the 3 that we tasted today, our goal is to achieve a certain level of consistency. So our master distiller, Jeff Duckhorn, he started his career in accounting. So he was an accountant and then decided he was interested in distilling and convinced Derek Benham, who's our company owner, to like give him a chance as being a distiller. So before working here, I've never seen so many Excel spreadsheets in my entire life. I've gotten so much better at Excel, shockingly good at it. But he really put together kind of like the scaffolding for what our blends look like long term, so that we can always have some of that similar structure throughout each individual batch. We're not really a batch offering for those core SKUs. We really are trying to go for that similarity between one to the next, but there's just a significant amount that goes into it. I mean, that's a 3 to 14-year-old whiskey. It's got 4 different states in it. It's got, several different mash bills in it, different ages, like anything and everything gets thrown in there with the Lost Monarch. So that's absolutely the most complicated blend that we have. Everything at the end is sensory. So we taste every one of the blends against the one before it, at least, and make sure that there is kind of a recognizable familiarity there for sure.
Nice.
But some of the components are changing, you know what I mean? And so, you're never going to have, no barrel is identical. So you do have a little bit of variation, but the larger your blend sizes are, the more you can kind of temper for that overall. And our batch sizes are between about 100 and 200 barrels.
Is it salvageable?
You never trash barrels. You never trash.
Okay, no. So they're salvageable.
You don't always use barrels at specific times, right? So, for example, we do bottled and bond projects as well, which are 100% our distillate. So we're at about 10% in the core SKUs that you have are things that we've distilled in-house. And then the bottled and bond, the Grizzly Beast and the Rocket Top, those are 100% ours. So we taste through all of the barrels every single time that we put those blends together, because that's, really important to us.
Love it.
And they're slightly smaller batch sizes than several 100 barrels we're pulling from. But so that one is for sure, like the first offering that we did of the bottled and bond was actually my first year working with Redwood Empire. And it was such an awesome opportunity to come on and kind of learn the house profile, spend some quality time with Jeff. He and I did all of the tasting together and did all of the blending together for 001 and obviously all the batches after that for the bottled and bonds. And there were plenty of barrels we didn't use. I mean, the first year of distillation, if anyone says they make amazing product the first year that they're distilling, they either distill someplace else first or they're lying. Because there is some, runway where you have to kind of figure stuff out. Even if you have experience with distillation, every piece of equipment is going to be a little bit different. And so you kind of have to figure out how that piece of equipment runs and operates and how you get the best out of it. So there are definitely barrels that we haven't used yet, but there's never going to be a you don't use it. You know what I mean?
I love it.
The best way to fix a barrel is to stick whiskey into a secondary barrel that had sugar in it. So honey barrels, Sauterne barrels, anything that had sugar in it at one point, that'll fix anything.
I love it.
We were talking about a bottle the other night that we had, and I won't belabor that point again. But Reba asked me, well, what did you do with it? And I'm like, well, I finished it. That's what I did.
I mixed it.
I didn't particularly enjoy it. So to that point of never throwing barrels out, and feel free to tell me, April, can't talk about that right now, but I promise to come back and talk to you about it when I can. There's my caveat. Speaking about barrels that you can't throw out, is there a particular project on the horizon for Redwood Empire that you're working on that's kind of got you excited or you're looking forward to? What do you want to do next?
Well, I mean, I think the one I'm most excited about is we're going to be releasing a wheated bourbon. I love wheat. I love working with wheat. I love drinking wheat whiskey. I love everything wheat. So I'm really excited about the wheat whiskey that's going to be coming out. But I did just spend all of this week, literally all week, tasting through single malt, American single malt, and putting that blend together for us because we are going to be releasing American single malt. So that's kind of really fresh in my mind. And it's a category that I feel I feel it's like really important to put a lot of thought into, because I think it's going to be an interesting one from a sales perspective, from a consumer perspective. It's not going to be anything like what people expect when they think single malt, because American single malt is so different. The barrels that we use that are different, the distillation methods that we use are different, and the malt is very, very different. America in particular, we're really inspired by like craft beer, right? So we're using a lot of craft beer malts as opposed to distillers malts, and the flavor profiles are wildly different when they come out at the end. So it's going to be a really interesting category, and I just feel a lot of responsibility to take it very seriously. And so, I've just been drinking a whole bunch of that this week. All of the barrels that we have that we're going to be putting into the blend together. So, I'm excited about that, just because I've put so much work into it in the past, 48, however many hours is in a week, 80, I guess. I don't know.
Do you know when you think that's coming out?
Well, the whiskey's ready. We're just kind of waiting on packaging. So my guess is it'll probably come out at some point next year.
Be ordered.
So what I really would like when it comes out, will you come back and talk to us again?
For sure.
Oh,
yeah.
good.
Yeah. Like I said, I've got so many feelings about American single malt. Like I have a lot of things that I feel about it. I'm very curious to hear what your perspective would be on it next time as well. I don't know how much American single malt that you've made your way through yet. I mean, it's starting to become more and more available as a SKU from different producers. So I'd be really curious to hear your perspective on the category as well.
It's just amazing. I'm so thrilled. Lauren, you have been amazing.
Thank you so much.
All right,
it was
man.
so much fun. Yeah, thank you.
Yay! All right, baby. Till next time.
Till next time.
Cheers.
Thanks for hanging out with Ape and Reba on this episode of Bitches and Bourbon.
Make sure to check out the links in the show notes, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Until next time, here's to bad bitches and good bourbon. Cheers.
You have to like spicy pickle.